Hello, friends. Welcome to another edition of Midweek with Meaning. This is the weekly show from me, Angela, from Guardian at the Gateway. My intention with this offering is really to inspire you, to give you something for contemplation over the next week, and to create a lens through which you can examine your lived experience. So, if you're watching live, please leave me some comments, some hearts, some likes. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat. And if you're watching a replay, please put replay in the comments. So, as you know, I'm Angela Ward, registered nurse and transformational coach, CEO of Guardian at the Gateway, where we invite you to journey within and return renewed, guiding you through the wildness of rebirth to a place of profound healing and harmony. So, let's talk about today's topic. And this is one that's been percolating for a little while, one that I've wanted to talk about for a little while, and that is the theme of disappointment. It's not necessarily a fun thing to talk about, but I recognize it coming up for me or coming up for you or for my clients in the Full Spectrum Vitality Collective. So I think this is really timely. So, where should we begin? What is a disappointment exactly, and how does it happen? The root word of disappointment means to remove from the appointment. It's a French word, it comes from French origins, which would mean that someone was being removed from office or removed from a situation that they had believed that they were engaged to, like losing a job, right? But of course, now in modern times, disappointment has such a broader range where it really seems to mean more like um, having an expectation that's not met and then feeling bad that that expectation was not met. So who here has had an experience of disappointment or being disappointed? I mean, for sure. I think every one of us has had that lived experience of disappointment. It's so common. And yet, how does it happen? Why does this even happen to us? And then I want to also offer some tools to help you process your disappointment while also helping you decrease the likelihood of disappointment happening again for you in other situations. So I think this is really a common experience because we have so many expectations of things that may be overt expectations or maybe more subversive expectations that don't get met. So let me think of an example. Well, this is a huge problem in psychedelic assisted therapy. Many people are hearing a lot about psychedelic assisted therapy, and they hear about people having these profound journeys and having these deep awakenings and having like the meaning of life revealed to them. And then someone will come to do like a ketamine assisted therapy session, for example, and not have that experience. May actually have a very different, full faced experience that's like, oh, wow, look, in which ways I'm not meeting what my expectation was. So that can be a huge struggle. And actually, I think it's a huge disservice in how people are talking about psychedelic assisted therapy. I think it's prevalent in maybe things like weight loss programs or fitness programs. There's so many things out there that we maybe have this hope that this is going to be that thing, or this person's going to be the one person that like understands me and gets me and won't ever say anything wrong or hurt my feelings, or this object is going to make me feel a certain way. So, and when those things don't happen, one of two things can happen. Well, a couple things can happen, not all of them simultaneous. We can feel perhaps a really profound sense of shame that maybe we didn't do it right, or maybe we're the one that's broken or can't be helped, perhaps. Or there was also this energy of kind of, yeah, I knew it, I told you so, it wasn't going to work for me, it wasn't going to work for me. Or, see, people always disappoint me or leave me or hurt my feelings. Or um, everything nice that I get breaks. It gets to be this really disruptor voice that happens. The disappointment is really connected to this sense of shame. And then also, but the truth is, what's happening is there's an unmet need. There's something that's not being met there. And at the surface, we can contemplate that. The surface, we can be like, well, I thought they would do this and then they didn't do that. So there can be this like shame that you even had the expectation. So if you find yourself in a state of disappointment, first of all, I just want to allow, and if you need permission for this, I'm happy to give it to you. It's okay to feel disappointed, allow yourself to feel it. Perhaps it makes you feel really sad. Perhaps it makes you feel really angry. Like, that's okay. There's no need in the immediate effect of this disappointment to talk yourself out of it or to let someone else talk you out of it. It's not helpful when you're feeling disappointed for someone to say, yeah, but this was this way, or you have this now, or like, it's kind of related to the grief spectrum in a way. It's kind of, disappointment is in the category, I think, often of sadness. So we never want to talk somebody out. You can't, honestly, you can't talk somebody out of feeling sad. You can't talk somebody out of being in grief. You can't talk someone out of being disappointed. And it really, if someone is trying to talk you out of it, or you're trying to talk yourself out of it, it's not really honoring your felt experience, right, that you're having about being disappointed. So while you're in it, I think it's okay to let yourself really feel it, because what happens when you allow yourself to feel it, you have at first this surface disappointment, but truly what's going on often when we're disappointed is it's connected to a core wound, a core root that's beyond this just surface disappointment. And that is where their treasure lies, is understanding what the core wound belief is that leads you to this sense of disappointment. So while you're in it, allow yourself to be in it. Take really good care of yourself. If you're capable of not spiraling with it, that is really, really helpful. So not into the everything is poop and I'm a piece of shit. Let's not go there. But you're like, yeah, that feels really shitty. I wanted it to be like this and it wasn't. And it's like this instead. And that sucks. But then as we're starting to move out of this, what are some tools that we can do to help process that, as well as help decrease that in the future? So after you're out of the core of the feeling of disappointment, and hopefully you've harvested a little bit of the treasure of what's the real underpinning of this disappointment, it's fascinating to look at in which ways your wounded child was not being served somehow, or your expectations weren't being met somehow. So first of all, I want to give permission for the person that disappointed you, or the experience that disappointed you, that like actually can be a problem, that they actually just didn't show up the way that you expected, or they were treated you poorly, or whatever. Like, the experience in itself, it can just be a shitty experience. But if we're going to try to reframe our brains and get into a place where it feels better for us, let's examine this core wound piece and take some time trying to understand what disappointment means for you, and how you allow your life to be in disappointment. Like, how does this keep showing up for you? But then some tools that we can examine to help this not continue to be a problem for you is, to get really clear about the difference between expectations and agreements. So, everybody that works with me in my coaching programs, we spend time discussing agreements rather than expectations. The challenge with an expectation is oftentimes it's secret. Like, I have an expectation you're going to be a certain way in this engagement, but I'm not going to tell you about it. You're not going to know that I have this expectation. And then if I keep it a secret, there's the rich territory for you to disappoint me. Now, truthfully, I think most people don't really want to disappoint other people. It doesn't feel good to let someone else down. Or, I think that part of who we are is we want to have harmony and connection between us. So, with the secret expectations, there's where the disappointment comes. So, taking agreements out, like, let's say just pure basic stuff that I work with my coaching clients. Like, I expect you to be on time for a call. I expect that I will be on time for my call. So can we agree to be on time for a call? And if we're going to be late, we'll text and, not to be later than a certain amount of time. This is kind of basic, less triggering things to make agreements around, right? One of the other agreements I make with my clients is if it's feeling hard or we're feeling disconnected, I intend, my agreement with you is that we will find a way to bring that conversation forward instead of kind of holding it back secretly. So, first of all, by understanding what your expectations were and then sharing them with the other person or in the other situation so you can negotiate agreements. Negotiating agreements helps so much because if you're coming to a situation and you don't have this high level expectation that can't be met, but we can try to get as close to that as possible, right? So managing expectations is another huge piece of understanding what is possible based on what's happening in the engagement. Another component is when we have these agreements is to also recognize that we might have a bit of an understanding of our expectations that are in our conscious awareness, but there's also a ton of stuff that's in our subconscious awareness around expectations that we often don't know exist until we are engaged in whatever the relationship is. So let me think of a way that's also, I'm kind of distracted by this music. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I hope you don't mind. It's DJ Dakini. She's the bomb. The hidden parts around expectations are very tricky. They're very tricky because sometimes we just don't even know that obviously they're hidden. We don't know until we run into disappointment, right? So how do we navigate those hidden expectations? So I would really invite you, if you're in a situation where you've hit a disappointment, that you find the ways within you to remain connected, especially if you're working in a situation with someone like me, for example. If I'm working in a coaching relationship with someone, that we try to keep coming back to the table and sharing this information that we're learning and how we might meet in agreement in a different way. Like, let's say me and a friend are hanging out, and in the conversation we move into territory that's maybe triggering for one or both of us, and it makes us not feel so great when we leave the conversation. And we might go away and be like, oh, I'm really disappointed. I was expecting that my time with this person was going to feel really great. Now I feel like shit and blah. Definitely allow yourself to feel the disappointment. Allow yourself to step away and kind of feel the feelings of it, but then examine it again. Like, what wasn't being met? And is there a way that I could have brought an agreement to the table? Like, I had expected that our conversation might go this certain way, and I didn't realize that that was an agreement or something I was expecting. How did it feel for you? do we need to renegotiate here? Is there something maybe we agree to have a topic off limit, or maybe um, something like that. I wonder if there's some ways that we can bring the negotiation in, of ways that feel agreeable to one another. So if there's any questions coming up around this, please put them in the chat. I know there's a lot to cover here when we talk about that felt sense of disappointment. Again, it is such a common human experience because so much is not in our awareness, right? So much is just not there. And many of us have learned for so long that feeling disappointment is just part of our lived human experience. Like, we've never maybe had our needs met, maybe never even been able to ask for what we need. So this is a beautiful way to grow in health and wellness, to get a clear understanding of what you need, what you long for, what you desire, and to share it with others so they can agree to meet you there or do their best to meet you in a way that feels within their agreements too. Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting one to think through this week. So this week, I would invite you to notice when those moments of disappointment arise for you, when you had an expectation that wasn't met the way that you had hoped for. And how can we transition from making it blaming, that person failed me, or I failed myself by not expressing my needs better? How can you allow yourself to sit with the disappointment without spiraling into a dangerous game about black and white thinking about the kind of person you are, or black and white thinking about how the other person is? And what can you learn about the core roots? What is your disappointment really about? So if you feel bold enough, if you're in the Unveiled Vitality Facebook group or you're in our Mighty Network, I would love for you to post in this chat, like, what part of you is really being let down when you're disappointed? Can you find a core piece of you or an old wound that maybe isn't being served? And then I would also love to hear, if you examine disappointment this week, what are some agreements that you would like to make, perhaps with the people around you or the situations that you find yourself in? So if you would be so kind as to post those in the chat when you are, after you've thought about it a bit, and let us know how we can support you in processing disappointment and making steps to help prevent it for you in the future. Agreements, not expectations, and realistic expectations. All right, loves. So good to talk to you this week. Thank you for joining me, and we'll talk again next week. Have a beautiful, beautiful spring day. Bye.